In 1933, a government pamphlet told prairie mothers to boil wheat kernels and serve them as porridge. No sugar, no milk, just boiled wheat and water. Today, nutritionists call it a superfood bowl and charge $14 at a cafe in Toronto. Number 18 on this list was condemned by Canadian health authorities. Yet modern food scientists say it preserves more nutrients than anything in your Loblaws freezer aisle. Number 5 involves a chemical reaction that professional bakeries still cannot replicate. These 30 recipes were so clever that grocery chains spent decades burying them, because if Canadians still cooked like their grandmothers, half the products on supermarket shelves would collect dust. Hit subscribe, because what you are about to learn could cut your grocery bill in half. Let us count them down. Number 30, potato water soup. When the drought turned Saskatchewan fields to dust and relief payments barely covered flour, mothers saved every drop of the water they boiled potatoes in. That starchy liquid became soup for a nickel. Boil the potatoes for supper, strain the water into a pot, add an onion, a knob of butter if they had it, salt and pepper. The starch thickened it naturally into something that resembled a thin chowder. Children drank it from enamel mugs, believing it was a proper cream soup. Mothers knew better. A pound of potatoes cost 3 cents in 1934, and nothing from that pound was wasted. The peels went to the chickens. The flesh became supper. The water became soup. Modern chefs now save potato water and call it liquid gold. Your grandmother called it Tuesday. Number 29, bread and lard. Before margarine conquered Canadian kitchens, lard was the fat of the poor. Spread thick on homemade bread with a pinch of salt, it kept Cape Breton miners standing through 12-hour shifts underground. A pound of lard cost 8 cents in 1932. A loaf baked with 5 roses flour cost 4 cents in ingredients. For 12 cents total, a mother fed her family a meal. Doctors later warned against animal fats, and margarine manufacturers pounced. But recent research published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal revisited those claims, finding that minimally processed animal fats may be less harmful than the trans fats that replace them. Your grandmother never read a study. She just knew that lard kept her children alive when nothing else would. Number 28, dandelion green salad. Every spring, prairie grandmothers sent children outside with baskets and a butter knife. Those weeds were supper. The greens were washed 3 times to remove grit, then dressed with hot bacon fat and a splash of vinegar. The heat wilted the leaves just enough to soften their bitterness, while the vinegar cut through the richness of the fat. This salad cost absolutely nothing and showed up on tables from Manitoba to the Maritimes every April. During the worst years, when grocery money ran out by Wednesday, dandelion greens provided iron, calcium, and vitamins A and C. Modern nutritionists classify them as a superfood and sell them for $6 a bunch. Your grandmother pulled them from the yard for free. We spray herbicide on them now. She dressed them with bacon grease and called it spring. Number 27, depression cake. No eggs, no butter, no milk. Your grandmother mixed flour, sugar, cocoa, baking soda, salt, vegetable oil, vinegar, and water directly in the baking pan. No bowls to wash. The vinegar reacted with the baking soda to create carbon dioxide bubbles, giving the cake its rise without eggs. The oil kept it moist for days. A whole chocolate cake cost less than 15 cents. The 5 Roses cookbook featured similar eggless recipes designed for hard times. Children never knew it was born from poverty. They just knew it was chocolate cake and fought over the last slice. Food companies later spent millions convincing Canadians that proper cake required boxed mixes with powdered chemicals and artificial flavoring. Meanwhile, the original recipe needed 5 minutes, 1 pan, and 0 electricity. Number 26, peanut butter bread, no eggs, no butter, no kneading. Your grandmother mixed flour, sugar, baking powder, salt, peanut butter, and milk into a sticky batter and baked it until golden. The peanut butter provided fat, protein, and binding all at once. A jar cost 20 cents in the early 1930s, and it stretched to make a dozen loaves. The Five Roses cookbook, published by Lake of the Woods Milling Company, featured this exact recipe for families struggling through the Depression. The bread came out dense, slightly sweet, and filling enough to silence children for a long afternoon. We buy artisan peanut butter loaves now for $8 at bakeries. Your grandmother made them because the egg money went to pay the hydro. Number 25, mock apple pie. Apple pie with no apples. Soda crackers soaked in a syrup of sugar, water, cream of tartar, and lemon juice, then baked in a pastry shell. The cream of tartar created a tartness that mimicked apples so convincingly that husbands could not tell the difference. The crackers softened into a texture remarkably close to cooked apple flesh. This recipe appeared in community cookbooks from Revelstoke to Charlottetown, passed between church groups and Women's Institute chapters. Ritz printed it on the back of their box for years. Your grandmother served it to guests who praised her baking. She smiled and never told them the truth. Number 24, vinegar pie. When lemons cost 20 cents each and citrus was a luxury shipped by rail from California, Canadian grandmothers used white vinegar, sugar, butter, eggs, and flour to create a custard filling that tasted like lemon pie. The acetic acid provided the tang, and the sugar balanced the sourness. Baked in a homemade pastry shell, it wobbled to the table looking like proper lemon pie. A bottle of vinegar cost 5 cents and lasted months. This recipe appeared in handwritten notebooks passed from mother to daughter across Ontario and Quebec. Modern pastry chefs serve vinegar pie for $12 a slice, calling it rustic heritage baking. Your grandmother called it making do. Number 23, milk toast. When a child was sick or the household budget collapsed, a grandmother heated milk, buttered a thick slice of bread, placed it in a bowl, and poured the hot milk over it. A pinch of salt. Sometimes sugar. Milk toast was the penicillin of the Depression kitchen. Doctors prescribed it for invalids. 2 slices of bread and a cup of milk cost 11 cents and created comfort, medicine, and a full belly. The dish vanished when cereal companies told families that breakfast came from a box. Kellogg's and General Mills did not want mothers heating milk and buttering bread. They wanted them buying cornflakes. Milk toast disappeared in a single generation, replaced by sugar-coated products that cost 10 times more and nourished 10 times less. Number 22. Bone broth. Your grandmother never threw away a bone. Chicken carcasses, ham bones, beef shanks, everything simmered on the wood stove for hours, with carrots gone soft, onions sprouting in the bin, and celery tops that children refused. She would add a splash of vinegar because the acid extracts more collagen and minerals from the bones. A pot of bone broth cost virtually nothing and fed a family for 3 days, stretched with barley, potatoes, or dumplings. In the 1930s, butchers gave bones away free. They were considered waste. Your grandmother took that waste, simmered it for 8 hours, and produced something modern health companies now sell for $7 a liter. She made it for free, every single week. First pattern break. Here is where things get interesting. The Women's Institute chapters, operating across every province during the Depression, became underground networks for survival cooking. Recipes were copied by hand, traded at meetings, and tested in kitchens from Victoria to St. John's. These were not fancy techniques. They were battle plans for feeding families on nothing. The government pamphlets told mothers to serve balanced meals. The Women's Institute taught them how to do it when the money ran out. Many recipes on this list came directly from those handwritten notebooks passed between neighbors who trusted each other more than they trusted Ottawa. The food industry later dismissed these methods as old-fashioned. Grocery chains wanted Canadians buying packaged goods, not simmering bones and stretching bread. But you cannot market wisdom, you can only forget it. And that is exactly what happened. Number 21, potato pancakes. Leftover mashed potatoes mixed with an egg, a spoonful of flour, salt and pepper, then fried in bacon grease until the edges turned golden and crispy. The outside shattered when you bit into it, The inside stayed creamy and soft. Children ate them with their fingers, burning their tongues and reaching for more. The potatoes had already been paid for. That was the genius of Depression cooking. Nothing ended. Every meal fed the next one. Modern brunch restaurants serve potato pancakes for $14 with sour cream and smoked salmon. Your grandmother served them on a Tuesday morning with ketchup. Number 20, habitant pea soup. Dried yellow peas, a ham bone, onions, and water simmered until thick enough to hold a spoon upright. Families across Quebec ate this 3 or 4 times a week during the worst years. A pound of dried peas cost 4 cents and fed 8 people. The Habitant brand eventually commercialized the recipe, but the tinned version never matched what came from a cast iron pot after 6 hours on the stove. The homemade version had a depth, a silkiness, a warmth that no factory could replicate. In Quebec, pea soup was not a recipe. It was religion. Number 19, oatmeal soup. Rolled oats were toasted in butter until fragrant, then simmered in water or milk with salt and pepper until they broke down into a thick porridge-like soup. A bag of Robin Hood oats cost 15 cents and lasted weeks. This recipe appeared in Relief Kitchen cookbooks distributed across Alberta and Saskatchewan during the drought years. It was not glamorous. It was not delicious in the way we think of delicious now. But it was warm, filling, and it kept families alive when the alternative was nothing at all. Number 18, salt pork and potatoes. The bedrock meal of the Maritimes. Thick slices of salt pork were fried until the fat rendered and the edges crisped. Then potatoes were cooked golden in that same fat. Served with boiled cabbage or turnip, it delivered enough calories to fuel a day hauling nets or splitting wood. Salt pork cost 10 cents a pound and kept for months without refrigeration. Perfect for homes without an icebox. Health authorities condemned the dish as dangerously fatty, but recent nutritional research found the combination of animal fat, starchy carbohydrates, and cruciferous vegetables actually provided a surprisingly complete nutritional profile. The women who served it 3 times a week were not following a diet plan. They were following instinct shaped by generations of hard living. Number 17, creamed eggs on toast. White sauce made from butter, flour, and milk. Hard-boiled eggs, chopped roughly and stirred through. The sauce is ladled over thick slices of toast for a family of 5. A dozen eggs cost 25 cents in 1934. Half a dozen eggs and a cup of milk turned bread into a meal substantial enough that fathers did not complain and children scraped their plates. This recipe showed up in home economics classrooms across Canada. It vanished when frozen television dinners promised convenience at 3 times the cost. Number 16, bread pudding. Stale bread was never thrown away. Your grandmother tore it into chunks, soaked it in milk, egg, sugar, and vanilla, then baked until the top turned golden and the inside set into a warm, custardy mass. Raisins, if she had them. Cinnamon, if the jar was not empty. A drizzle of maple syrup near the sugar bush. The whole pan cost less than a dime. Modern restaurants charge $12 a portion for bread pudding. Your grandmother served it because throwing away bread was a sin she could not afford to commit. Second pattern break. Here is what the grocery companies do not want you to understand. Depression cooking was not just about poverty. It was a system of knowledge that made corporate food products unnecessary. When your grandmother could turn stale bread into pudding, dandelions into salad, and bone scraps into broth, she did not need to walk down a single aisle at Loblaws. She needed flour, salt, lard, and thyme. That terrified the companies building their empires on convenience. So they did what corporations always do. They marketed the old ways as backward, embarrassing, something your mother did because she had no choice. They sold freedom in a box, and we bought it. Number 15, molasses on bread. In the Maritimes and across rural Quebec, Crosby's molasses cost 12 cents a tin and lasted weeks. Spread on buttered bread, it was breakfast, lunch, and sometimes supper. A tablespoon provided more iron than a serving of spinach. Your grandmother did not know the science. She knew it kept her children strong enough to walk to school and back in January snow. Number 14. Cabbage soup. Cabbage cost 3 cents a head and kept for weeks in a cold cellar. Shredded, fried with onion, then simmered in water or broth. A head of cabbage fed 6 people twice. Some versions added tinned tomatoes, others relied on nothing but salt and a bay leaf. Nutritionists now praise cabbage as a cruciferous powerhouse rich in vitamin C and fiber. Your grandmother did not need a nutritionist. She needed 3 cents and a pot. Number 13. Bannock. Flour, baking powder, salt, and lard mixed with water into a rough dough. It could be baked in the oven, fried in a skillet, or wrapped around a stick over the fire. No yeast, no eggs, no rising time. From dough to table, in 20 minutes for less than 5 cents. Bannock was the fastest bread in a Canadian kitchen, and the cheapest. Families ate it with stew, beans, soup, molasses, or plain with nothing but salt. It fed children across the prairies when the flour bin was nearly empty and payday was still a week away. Number 12. Jellied salads. A packet of Knox gelatine for a few cents stretched leftover meat and vegetables into a dish that looked like a church supper centerpiece. Shredded cabbage, grated carrot, tinned salmon, and cold chicken. Those ingredients were dissolved in hot water with vinegar, folded together, poured into a mold, and set overnight. The Vancouver Sun ran weekly jelly salad recipes during the Depression years. We think of jellied salads as strange relics now. In their day, they were genius, a way to present scarcity as abundance. Number 11. Navy bean soup. Dried navy beans, at 4 cents a pound, were soaked overnight, then simmered for hours with a ham bone, an onion, and whatever root vegetables the seller could spare. Served with torn bread dropped into the bowl. Bean soup was the backbone of Depression kitchens from Thunder Bay to Fredericton. Cheap, nutritious, filling, and forgiving. You could not ruin it. You could only make it better by adding more time. Number 10. Cornmeal mush. Cornmeal boiled in salted water, served hot for breakfast with maple syrup. Leftover poured into a loaf pan and set overnight. Next morning, sliced thick and fried in bacon fat until both sides turned golden. That fried mush with Rogers syrup cost less than a nickel and kept children quiet until lunch. 1 pot of cornmeal, 2 completely different meals. We call this meal planning now. Your grandmother called it common sense. Number 9. Water pie. This sounds impossible. A pastry shell, flour, sugar, vanilla, a knob of butter, and plain water. Baked until the ingredients transformed into a sweet, custardy filling that tasted like butterscotch. No eggs, no milk, no cream. A whole pie for 6 cents. Food historians trace this recipe to the deepest years of the Depression, when eggs and dairy vanished from many kitchens entirely. It was the most desperate recipe on this list, and somehow one of the most delicious. Number 8. Mulligan stew. Whatever she had went into a heavy pot and simmered until it became a meal. Potatoes, turnips, carrots, cabbage, an onion, maybe a scrap of meat. There was no recipe, only instinct. In relief camps across Canada, mulligan stew fed thousands of unemployed men. In family kitchens, it was dinner that asked no questions. The pot stayed on the stove for days, topped up with water and whatever came to hand. Your grandmother never made the same stew twice, and nobody complained. Third pattern break. Consider this. In the 1930s, the average Canadian family spent roughly 40% of their income on food. Today, that figure sits around 11%. We spend less money on food than any generation in Canadian history. And yet we feel poorer in the kitchen than our grandmothers ever did. They could feed 8 people on $1. We struggle to feed 4 on 50. The difference is not money, it is knowledge. Your grandmother could turn water into pie, bones into broth, stale bread into dessert, and dandelions into dinner. We have lost those skills, and no amount of grocery delivery can replace them. Number 7, chipped beef on toast. Dried, salted beef, sliced paper thin, stirred into a white sauce of flour, butter, and milk, ladled over toast. Dried beef kept for months without refrigeration and cost less than fresh meat. A quarter pound stretched into supper for 4 when buried in white sauce and served over bread. The salty, savory flavor cut through the blandness, making it taste richer than it was. Number 6, economy meat pie. Leftover roast, diced with cold vegetables, bound in a cream sauce made from flour, butter, and milk, then topped with pastry or mashed potatoes and baked until golden. The 1930 Drumheller Review published this exact recipe for Alberta families struggling through the drought. Every ingredient had already been bought and cooked. That was the quiet art of depression cooking, making scarcity invisible. Children ate it believing it was a fresh meal. Mothers knew it was yesterday, wearing a new coat. Number 5, 1 AG cake. When eggs cost more than most families could justify, your grandmother developed cakes using 1 egg instead of 3. The 1932 Foods, Nutrition, and Home Management Manual, distributed to home economics students across Canada, published precise formulas. The single egg was beaten until frothy, incorporating as much air as possible. Buttermilk activated the leavening, and vinegar added lift. Your grandmother worked that egg harder than any mixer could, and the cake rose nearly as high as its richer cousin. A penny per slice. Duncan Hines later sold Canada on box mixes. Your grandmother needed 1 egg, a strong arm, and 15 minutes. Number 4, fried bologna. The cheapest processed meat in the store. Thick slices, scored at the edges, fried in a hot pan until caramelized and puffed into a dome. Serve between bread with mustard or alongside fried potatoes. The frying transformed bland luncheon meat into something smoky, crispy, and deeply satisfying. The smell brought children running from 3 rooms away. A 10-cent supper that tasted like a $1 meal. Too good and too cheap to ever truly forget. Number 3, potato, soup with flour dumplings. When the cellar held nothing but potatoes and flour, potatoes were boiled with onion, then mashed into the broth to thicken it. Spoonfuls of flour and water dough were dropped into the simmering pot. The dumplings swelled, absorbing broth, turning soft and pillowy. Less than 8 cents for every bowl on the table. Dumplings were the trick. They turned thin soup into something substantial enough that husbands did not ask what else there was. There was nothing else, but there did not need to be. Number 2, poor man's meal. Peel a potato, dice it small, fry it with oil and sliced onion until golden. Add hot dog rounds. Cook until the edges brown. 1 pan, 3 ingredients, no pretension. Potatoes and hot dogs were the cheapest foods in Depression-era Canada. The onions caramelized sweet. The potatoes crisped at the edges. The hot dogs provided just enough salt and protein to make it feel real. This recipe kept families alive through the 1930s. It required a stove and the will to keep cooking. Nothing more. Number 1, flour and water gravy on bread. The last meal. The meal you made when nothing else remained. Your grandmother melted a spoonful of drippings in a pan, stirred in flour until it browned, then slowly added water until a thick gravy formed. Salt, pepper, and whatever dried herbs remained. She poured it over slices of bread. It tasted like warmth, like effort, like a mother refusing to let her children go to bed hungry when the cupboard held nothing but flour and will. This recipe has no formal name. It appears in no cookbook. But it existed in every province, every town, every home, where poverty pressed hard enough to strip cooking down to its most essential act. 4 ingredients and a mother's refusal to give up. That is the most important recipe on this list. Not because it is delicious, but because it is proof that love does not require ingredients. It requires only the decision to keep going. Try one of these this week. Potato pancakes, bannock, or 1 egg cake. Then come back and tell me your grandmother was wrong. These were not just meals, they were wisdom that grocery companies spent decades trying to erase. Your grandmother knew. Now you know too.